Coming up, we discuss the latest comments from Kyrie Irving, this time meeting with the press since the last instance in which he was questioned on his beliefs around anti Semitism as it pertains to a post that he put up on social media a week ago. We'll move back the timeline and highlight the Brooklyn Nets and Kyrie Irving's joint statement that was made, along with Adam Silver's commentary prior to the latest speakings from Kyrie, which may ultimately suggest that there could be far bigger issues in Brooklyn going forward.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Brooklyn, yo. All right, welcome into the Locked On Nets podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's, of course, your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I am Adam Armbrecht, and we thank you for making us your first listen and free on all those great platforms. We will dispense with some of the pleasantries here, as obviously, if you follow the team and if you've been on social media, you've probably seen the latest comments from Kyrie Irving, this time meeting with the media, sounding like at the practice facility and continuing to address the circumstances around his post, which linked to content, which, of course, was a level of disinformation and anti-Semitic commentary associated with it. We're going to back things up here just briefly because we didn't get a chance to come on since last some of these things were addressed, including the joint statement and how the Brooklyn Nets and Kyrie Irving, along with the ADL, seem to be collectively addressing this issue. We'll follow it up with what Adam Silver had to say about it, and then discuss what Kyrie Irving's comments were and what it could mean ultimately for the Brooklyn Nets point guard going forward here. So this was from a couple of days ago, obviously, a joint statement from Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets, along with the Anti-Defamation League. Now, I'm not going to read through the entirety of it because it is a long statement. However, it opened with, the events of the past week have sparked many emotions within the Nets organization, our Brooklyn Nets community, and the nation. The public discourse that followed has brought greater awareness to the challenges we face as a society when it comes to combating hate and hate speech. We are ready to take on this challenge, and we recognize that this is a unique moment that makes a lasting impact. The follow-up to that is to promote education within our community. Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets will each donate $500,000 towards causes and organizations that work to educate hate and intolerance in our communities. The Nets and Kyrie Irving will work with the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, a nonprofit organization devoted to fighting anti-Semitism and all types of hate that undermine justice and fair treatment to every individual. This is an effort to develop educational programming that is inclusive and will comprehensively combat all forms of anti-Semitism and bigotry. We'll take just a pause here from that to highlight that inside of that joint statement, which was made, it was reported that the meetings with the ADL between the Brooklyn Nets did not include Kyrie Irving. It included his representation. I believe it was reported that his father was there along with additional, I think his stepmother potentially was also there representing him, but not present was Kyrie Irving. And we can, at the time of the release of the initial statement, can speculate whether or not that mattered ultimately in this. However, just to give the complete perspective here, the Brooklyn Nets coming out and taking a little bit of time to assess perceptually what felt like the blowback level of this. There was not an immediate response, and we're not saying that it's a situation where Kyrie Irving or any player in any circumstance or any person should automatically be suspended, should automatically be let go, should automatically be fined immediately. However, it did have this sense that the organization was trying to gauge where they were going to be in terms of the community and what the best steps were going to be to hopefully move past it. Inside of this as well was included the statement from Kyrie Irving where he said, I oppose all forms of hatred and oppression and stand strong with communities that are marginalized and impacted every day. He went on to say, I am aware of the negative impact of my post towards the Jewish community, and I take responsibility. So it is said inside of this statement from him, which was released a day or two ago. I do not believe everything said in the documentary, Kyrie went on to say, was true or reflects my morals and principles. I am a human being learning from all walks of life, and I intend to do so with an open mind and a willingness to listen. So, from my family and I, we meant no harm to any one group, race, or religion of people and wish to only be a beacon of truth and light. There is no room for anti Semitism, racism, false narratives, or misguided attempts to create animosity and hate, said Sam Zussman, Chief Executive Officer of BSC Global, parent company of the Brooklyn Nets and the Barclays Center. Now more than ever, he went on to say, there is a pressing need to ensure education in these areas. We are putting our prior statements into practice because actions speak louder than words. There are additional comments from the ADL representatives as well. However, this is what was the initial commentary from the Brooklyn Nets in conjunction with the ADL, in conjunction with Brooklyn Nets ownership, their parent company, as mentioned there, as well as Kyrie and his representation. That was followed up, however, by NBA Commissioner Adam Silver's statement, which followed the release of that from the Brooklyn Nets and Kyrie. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver issued the following statement. Kyrie Irving made a reckless decision to post a link to a film containing deeply offensive anti Semitic material. While we appreciate the fact that he agreed to work with the Brooklyn Nets and the Anti Defamation League to combat anti Semitism and other forms of discrimination, I am disappointed that he has not offered an unqualified apology and, more specifically, denounced the vile and harmful content contained in the film he chose to publicize. I'll be meeting with Kyrie in person in the next week to discuss this situation. That was the extent of the commentary from Adam Silver. And again, we can sit here and parse words around um, what Kyrie Irving said in the statement and whether or not he took it to the extent that he should have. It feels like he did not. It feels like he came up short in fully addressing the concerns and fully addressing the issues and fully acknowledging the damage potentially that he could do on the platform with his reach that he has to communities and to the people that are influenced by his voice and by his words. Now, beyond that, he then finally did meet with the media. I don't say finally with any level of criticism. He was held out by the organization, as Sean Marks had met with the press previously and said, this is where we currently stand. We're keeping him away. We're trying to let cooler heads prevail. Inside of that press conference, as we know, in the background of all of this, Steve Nash was let go, mutually parted ways with the organization. And all indications from Adrian Wojnarowski and Sham Charania is that the wheels are in motion and that Ime Udoka, who has his own off the court concerns that Doug Norrie and I discussed previously on the podcast, is going to be the next head coach for the Brooklyn Nets. So there is no shortage of conversations around the Brooklyn Nets organization at this moment. It simply comes down to how are they going to move forward with this. That being said, today he met Kyrie Irving, that is, with the media and was once again asked, I believe initially by Nick Friedel from ESPN, who did have the interaction with Kyrie at the previous press conference, which did become contentious. But Nick Friedel asked, do you have anti-Semitic beliefs? Excuse me. Kyrie responded, I do not know how the label became justified because you asked me the same questions over and over again, but this is not going to become a spin around cycle. He went on to say, I respect all walks of life. That is where I sit. Friedel pressed him with the question, I think people want a yes or no when referencing, do you hold anti Semitic beliefs? To which Kyrie Irving responded, I cannot be anti Semitic if I know where I come from. Adam Silver wanted to hear the words. Another reporter asked him, I apologize, or in your mind, you said you didn't mean to cause any harm. Were you apologizing, in effect? Kyrie responded with, I didn't mean to cause any harm. I am not the one that made the documentary. In all of these things, in all of these instances, what becomes, I think, pretty apparent is that there is both the content and subject matter of the movie that he posted a link to, which is incredibly harmful and incredibly dangerous to be promoting that. And I'm not saying, again, to split the hairs of was he promoting it versus it lived on his platform. Neither here nor there. The content itself is awful and should not exist in a public space and should not be promoted, highlighted, elevated in any way. However, it seems like Kyrie Irving is unwilling to go the extra step of simply saying, I made a mistake. I made a mistake in posting this link. I just shouldn't have done it, regardless of what my personal views, perspectives, or things that I am interested in exploring deeper. And I don't mean anti Semitic commentary, anything. We know that Kyrie Irving has long stood on the principles that he is a free thinker, in his own words, that he wants to learn from all walks of life, in his own words. But simply saying, I'm sorry that this happened. I did not intend for it to be the case, and I apologize. That probably takes care of most of this, in conjunction with contributing money to the ADL, working within the community, and all the other things that come along with circumstances like this, regardless of the specifics. Players, personalities, public figures. You are very much afforded the ability to acknowledge a mistake or error in judgment and move past it. There seems to be a separation between what Kyrie Irving is willing to accept as his responsibility versus what is the circumstances that are occurring around him. That being the case, as I said at the top, the other part of this that I don't necessarily love is that the Brooklyn Nets do seem to be, and this is just from a high level, it's almost partially removed from this conversation specifically. The Brooklyn Nets, who had built a reputation under Sean Marks as being a team, just fundamentally from the way they built their team, going out and getting players, taking on bad contracts, rebuilding, that word we've heard and used so many times before, culture of the organization. They built all that equity up to put themselves in a position to attract players like Kyrie Irving and like Kevin Durant. Now, fast forward these few years later, and they are in a circumstance where perceptually, I cannot envision a time 3 years ago or pre Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving where a circumstance like this would have been brought up and the Brooklyn Nets would not have been as proactive as any organization in addressing it and responding in a somewhat swift manner. And whether or not, I don't know what the specifics of that would look like, but simply saying Kyrie Irving is going to stay away from the team for the time being, and then we will address it in due course. Instead, there seemed to be a balancing act trying to be struck by the organization about what the reaction was going to be and what they would need to do in response to that. People have brought up Miles Leonard and his situation. And as we know in all sports, not just basketball and not just with Kyrie Irving, with all sports, the more talented you are, the higher the threshold for the level of issues that you will deal with. This comes at a time in the NBA where we know San Antonio is dealing with the issues of Josh Primo, who has been released by the team. But now, as more information comes out, we're starting to get a better picture of what they're going to be dealing with going forward, both as an organization, as an individual in Josh Primo's case. I don't know where this goes from here and what this meeting now, by the way, again, the meeting that Adam Silver had apparently set or desired to set with Kyrie Irving prior to his interactions with the media. I don't know where that conversation is going to go, but there is already the speculation around what is going to happen next for Kyrie Irving as it pertains to the Brooklyn Nets. And it brings up a bigger question, which is almost difficult to compartmentalize, that Ime Udoka, as we mentioned, had his concerns and issues in Boston. Boston chose to suspend him for the year, but is also going to afford him the ability to simply part ways with the organization with no punishment, no scrutiny, etc. On the one hand, and it's hard because we're having this global discussion, you can look at it and say people are deserving of second chances. And as some have discussed in the media, one organization's policies around certain things may not be the same as another. So if the Brooklyn Nets organizational policies are not the same as Boston Celtics, they may see no issue with it. There is, however, a perceptual issue with it, because with everything that is going on with the organization right now, they're choosing to go with a coach who, by the way, obviously has ties with the Nets organization, going back to being on the coaching staff, has ties, as Doug Norrie and I were exchanging text messages a couple of days ago, just around Ime specifically, has ties with Ben Simmons going back to his time in Philadelphia, and obviously has ties going back to San Antonio with Sean Marks. So there is all of this all of this connection to the Nets organization that makes you say, okay, they're going to give him the second chance here after what happened in Boston. Simultaneously, it can be the correction of their failure, maybe prior to last season, of not saying, we think Ime Udoka could be ready to be the head coach and to be our head coach, and we're going to part ways with Steve Nash. Instead, we go through the entirety of this offseason where Kevin Durant requested a trade, where Kevin Durant also requested that Sean Marks and Steve Nash be fired, and whether or not the first 7 games of this season had the impact that was discussed by Sean Marks in the press conference. Ultimately, Steve Nash parted ways, and again, not fired, but he is no longer the head coach. But you couple that with what's going on with Kyrie Irving, and the question becomes, what is the expectation for this organization going forward? And this is even beyond what's going on with Kyrie right now in this moment, and beyond what's going on with Ime Udoka going back to Boston. Does this team still look at itself and believe that it can compete at a high level this year? How long are we going to go into this season before an assessment needs to be made? And right now, it looks like, at least some of the speculation is whether or not the Brooklyn Nets are going to, which would seem very difficult in this moment, look to trade Kyrie Irving or simply outright release him. Now, you can make any delineation around what you think should be the right punishment, the wrong punishment, the justified punishment, etc. But all of these things exist in the perception of what should be getting done here. And in the same way that the Brooklyn Nets organization has not necessarily handled this as well as they should have, Kyrie Irving has not handled it as well as he should have either. And this can also be the culmination of everything that has gone on over the course of Kyrie Irving's tenure. There's different levels to it. There's different levels of concern to the things that have gone on. Some things were out of Kyrie Irving's control, and some things are active choices that he made for himself. It really is hard to decide what the best path forward might be for individuals and for the organization, if I'm being honest. My thinking is that I wouldn't be shocked if Kyrie Irving is not. Well, let's be clear. I don't see any chance that Kyrie Irving is a member of the Brooklyn Nets beyond this year, right? I think that this has been about as exhaustive of an experience as you could have. And we don't know what the state of the Nets is going to be by the time you get to next offseason. But inside of this year, it might be the best thing for everyone involved if Kyrie Irving is no longer a member of the Brooklyn Nets. I don't know if any other team could even consider the idea of touching a trade conversation around Kyrie Irving. And I don't know if Kyrie Irving would even want to do that. And it's something that, beyond, again, the controversy that's surrounding him right now, we've had these conversations in the past. Kyrie Irving loves to play basketball, but he also loves a lot of other areas of his life. And if the compartmentalization of that is focusing on some things that happen in season, out of season, etc., and not always being fully dedicated to this job, being an NBA basketball player, there may be a sense of relief to be able to take a step away from the NBA at this point. It's really, it is hard to fully know what Kyrie Irving might truly want, and obviously getting back to this conversation, what he truly feels. I don't necessarily, I'm not going to verbalize that I think Kyrie Irving has certain beliefs or holds certain beliefs. The biggest problem through this is that Kyrie Irving is not directly denying and apologizing for what happened. That's what it comes down to. And you see it through the joint statement with the Brooklyn Nets. You see it with the way Adam Silver is addressing it. And you're seeing it even with Kyrie and the frustration that he is showing when he gets into these media sessions. Now, these last two times specifically, it has very much been of his own doing. We've said before, media, going back all the way to media day, it looked like it was a reset for the interactions with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and the entire organization. And even reporters who have had some contentious discussions with Kyrie Irving or contentious media sessions with him over the years seemingly were ready to reset the narrative and reset that relationship. Um, Again, just to reiterate, Kyrie Irving did meet with the media today. His direct statements in response to the question, do you have any anti Semitic beliefs? I don't know. Kyrie Irving responded, I don't know how this label becomes justified because you've asked me the same questions over and over, and this is not going to become a spin around cycle. I respect all walks of life. That is where I sit. I think people want a yes or a no. He was asked again in regards to holding anti Semitic beliefs, and his response was, I cannot be anti Semitic if I know where I come from. It may be semantics in the verbiage that you choose, but there is something actively dismissive when you just cannot come out and respond directly to the questions being asked. And likewise, when he was asked by another reporter in the session, Adam Silver wanted to hear the words, I apologize, or in your mind, you said you didn't mean to cause any harm. Were you apologizing? Essentially saying, you can confirm that you apologize for posting that link and for the situation it caused. I didn't mean to cause any harm. I am not the one that made the documentary. Again, saying that you didn't mean to cause any harm is a very positive thing, but saying I am not the one that made the documentary somehow seems to compartmentalize where the responsibility lies. As we said before on the podcast, we like our focus and attention to be about the team and about Brooklyn Nets basketball, but this is not going to go away until there is some type of concrete resolution. The bottom line is that after you have the joint statement from the Brooklyn Nets, and let's just be clear, even beyond Kyrie Irving, Adam Silver was not satisfied with what the Brooklyn Nets did and what they had to say and how they handled it. And then the other piece inside of this, as we have talked about before, is the NBA PA and their role. And it's a part of why that exists. And that is to help the vice president of the NBA PA, who is Kyrie Irving, in circumstances where he may feel like he was wrongfully suspended, wrongfully fined, or something was not supposed to happen, right? And they will, I'm sure, will have their role going forward in this. But from a NBA team perspective, it becomes really hard to see how this team has success this year, right? So that's the bottom line. We've now seen the post, we've heard the explanation, we've received the joint apology, we've received Adam Silver's commentary, and we've heard from Kyrie Irving. This team, this organization, I don't know how you see this team moving forward successfully this year. I cannot see it. And we said this coming back in to the NBA season, where Doug and I discussed this just around the team as it stood, between Ben Simmons, his health, getting back and acclimated, between Steve Nash and if he was going to be a good enough coach, and now if Ime Udoka will be a good enough coach. Very rarely do teams who have not had a prior significant track record of success been able to come back in and just turn it around. And some people have talked about, and we've mentioned, the LA Lakers at the back end of Kobe when he wanted to be traded, but they held off. They kept him there. They retooled the roster. They won a championship with him, right? That those examples do exist, but the Brooklyn Nets don't have that. The Brooklyn Nets have toe on the line against the Milwaukee Bucks in the second round 2 playoff seasons ago. That's the last image of success that they have, right? Swept by the Boston Celtics a season ago in the first round of the playoffs. Everything that has gone on over the course of this season, an off season, frankly. So for an organization that looked like it had built up so much quality cachet around the league, enough to be able to attract superstar talent, they seem as disjointed in their approach to handling this and to handling the team overall. Because again, even beyond the Kyrie Irving situation, then it's the Ime Udoka situation, and just the perception of bringing in a coach who's actively suspended by his current team, and that team, even after going to the NBA Finals, is willing to let him walk away without any compensation to go become the head coach of another team. So, um, it's certainly a difficult set of circumstances for the Brooklyn Nets, for Kyrie Irving, for the NBA commissioner, and all of that to say, I think that at the infancy of this, a simple and direct, I shouldn't have posted that. I apologize if I offended anyone. It was a mistake on my part. This probably goes away a lot quicker. And if Kyrie Irving wants to stand on what his beliefs are and what he believes his action should be, that's for him to decide. That's for him to choose. But it's also for the fan base, the organization, the league, and for, in this instance, the Jewish community to respond and react with the way that they feel in regards to what he posted and some of the sentiments that, at least at the beginning, he shared. That being the case, we will obviously come back in and see where this goes from here. Kyrie Irving clearly frustrated with with the continual questioning around this. The media has its role to play and its job to do, so that's it. But we'll see what happens with the commissioner as well. That meeting is still going to go on, and we'll see if anything changes from the Brooklyn Nets side, right? Essentially, we have every step here along the way, but this would be the latest chapter, the latest moment in this. And we'll just see if it changes anything that's already occurred, being the meeting with the ADL, the decision for both the organization and Kyrie Irving to donate $500,000 to help build up education and to help build up opportunities to grow better relationships in the community. All of those things that feel, for the most part, positive coming out of this. Is that all enough? Will this eventually subside and blow over? We have, just to put the news and notes on it, tie a bow on this. We obviously have the Brooklyn Nets coming back in. No basketball game tonight. They will play on Friday and on Saturday night. So we'll have that whole conversation. And again, in the same way that we're discussing Kyrie Irving, just to make it as fair and as blanket a coverage as we can, the Ime Udoka situation is still something that we're probably going to hear a little bit more about as well. Specifics that of what occurred in his time in Boston, and then what will the blowback be potentially for that. Um, all that to say, what a incredibly difficult time to be a Brooklyn Nets fan, regardless of how you feel about how it was handled, how you feel the organization handled it, how you feel the commissioners handling it, how you feel the larger media is handling it overall. It's all still going on, and you have to get through it before you can clearly reset the table and hopefully move forward and have the Brooklyn Nets and the basketball on the court be the focus of it. That being the case, you will see me on YouTube for the post game on the Friday night game. We're breaking that down. Tomorrow, you will see a crossover episode with myself and the Locked On Lakers, the Kamenetsky brothers, both Andy and Brian. We touch on a little bit of what's gone on here with Kyrie, but the bulk of the conversation is around how these two teams seemingly were in a similar spot in the offseason and where they stand 7-8 games into this 2022 NBA season. So that's a nice little reprieve here from this conversation, and we'll see where it goes. Maybe there is a world where Kyrie Irving remains with this team, with Kevin Durant, and with what we said coming into the year was an incredibly deep, balanced roster, the best version of this team in the Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving era, and what they could accomplish going forward. But in this moment, seems like there's a lot for the organization to sort out, to say the very least. So post games tomorrow, post game Saturday night probably as well, and then updates around this with whatever it's going to mean for the Brooklyn Nets on and off the court. You can, of course, follow us on YouTube. We thank everyone who joined in on the live session here, and we'll continue to update as things go on. And then over on the podcast feed, wherever you get those needs fulfilled. No need for quotes today. Obviously, this was a less pleasant and lighthearted episode, as we usually like to do. But we'll see what comes next here. And as always, we'll be back in talking all things Brooklyn Nets basketball.